on Canadian heritage. Obviously, I am not Hetty Fry. However, I'm pleased to take the chair in her stead until she gets here. And as luck would have it, I see that Dr. Fry has just joined the meeting. So why don't I turn the floor over to Chair Fry? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, John, for pulling that out for me. Sometimes in the deepest, darkest wilds of Vancouver here, we sometimes have a miss when we try to connect in any sort of way with the Wi-Fi. But I'm on now, so there we go. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and I apologize for being late and trying to get on to this sort of contraption. Anyway, I call this meeting to order and welcome everyone to meeting number 43 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage. I want to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. Now, pursuant to the order of reference adopted by the House on Tuesday, May the 31st, 2022, and the motion adopted by the committee on Tuesday, September the 20th, 2022, the committee is meeting on the study of Bill C-18, an act respecting online communications platforms that make news content available to persons in Canada. And today's meeting, of course, is taking place in a hybrid format, again, pursuant to the House Order of Thursday, June the 23rd, 2022. Members attending in person in the room know how to use the interpretation, which is at the bottom of and how to get your translation. For those of you virtually, interpretation is at the bottom of your screen, a little globe, press it, and you will get English or French, depending on what the languages that you want to use. Now, and I want to make a few comments for the benefit of the witnesses and members. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click again, as I said, on the microphone icon when you wish to speak, and then mute yourself when you're not speaking. For those of you on Zoom, you know how to use it. Again, at the bottom of the screen, there is an interpretation. There is a raise hand function if you should ever need to use it. And a reminder that all comments should be addressed to the chair. So in accordance with our routine motion, I am informing the committee that all witnesses have completed the required connection tests in advance of the meeting. And now I want to welcome our witnesses here. And the first witness we have is Jen Gerson, co-founder of The Line and Independent Journalists. We then have Mr. Geist, Michael Geist. We then have Rod Sims, professor of Crawford School of Public Policy, the Australian National University, and he is on by video conference. We have Hebdos Quebec, Benoit Chartier, chair of the video conference, Sylvain Poisson, general manager by video conference of the Logic Inc., David Koch, founder and chief executive officer of News Media Canada, Paul Deegan, president and chief executive officer of News Media Canada, and Jamie Irvin, who is the chair. So how this works is I will begin by giving each one of those people that I have named 5 minutes. I have a stop clock and I will give you a 30-second warning. Normally you could do this by a piece of paper. Nobody looks at the paper because they're all busy reading. So I'm going to just say 30 seconds so you know that you have 30 seconds to wrap up. And you each have 5 minutes, and then after that, there will be a question and answer session. So again, I will give you a 30-second warning when your 5 minutes is going to be up. So I am beginning with Ms. Gerson. Please begin, Ms. Gerson.
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to thank the committee for inviting me to speak. My name is Jen Gerson, and I've worked in media for more than 15 years in newsrooms across the country, including the Toronto Star, Globe and Mail, Calgary Herald, and the National Post. As a freelancer, my work has appeared in Walrus, Maclean's, the New York Times, and the Washington Post, among other places. At the moment, my co-founder, Matt Gurney, and I run a Substack-based newsletter called The Line that publishes Canadian commentary. There I published several pieces by myself and other writers explaining my many concerns with Bill C-18. The first major problem that I have with this bill is that it's predicated on a lie. The bill adopts a very ancient complaint of newspaper publishers that aggregation-based news websites and social media networks are unduly profiting by quote-unquote publishing our content. But of course, we know that this isn't true. In fact, the value proposition runs in exactly the opposite direction. We publishers are the ones who benefit when a user posts a link to our content on Facebook, Twitter, and the like. This free distribution drives traffic to our websites, which we can then try to monetize through subscriptions and advertising. This is why major media organizations encourage link sharing below all articles. It's why they've spent untold sums on maximizing SEO, and it's why they literally spend money with digital news intermediaries to boost stories on these platforms. If you need evidence that many of these digital news intermediaries are valuable to publishers, are more valuable to publishers than the other way around, we need only look at to the existence of this bill in the first place. Negotiations are sustainable when the outcome of those negotiations serve the interests of all parties involved. If that were the case here, there would be no need for the federal government to oversee these deals. Digital news intermediaries would be happy to negotiate for the use of our content because they would perceive value out of that deal. Instead, I suspect that what we see here is a form of rent-seeking behavior in which struggling media corporations are using every last iota of their dwindling financial and social capital to lobby for subsidies and regulations like C-18. I fear that C-18 is going to backfire spectacularly, undermining the very goals that it is trying to fix. Undermining the very problems that it is trying to fix. For example, if organizations like Facebook or Meta respond to this legislation by simply restricting access to mainstream news articles on their site, as the company has openly threatened to do, who do you think is going to be most harmed by that decision? Facebook? No, it will be Canadian publishers themselves, who will be harmed by losing access to a major distribution hub. And when that happens, do we think that removing news links from Facebook or Twitter will somehow create a digitized version of the glory days in which Canadians begin their mornings by loyally logging onto their local newspapers? Or are we risking the opposite effect? Would it actually strip mainstream media content from the websites and social media platforms where more Canadians live their online lives? I fear the latter outcome. If you make it costly for digital news intermediaries to publish mainstream news content, they're going to make the very obvious financial choice. That is, they're going to distribute less mainstream news content, pushing more and more Canadians into semi-private information silos on places like Discord, Telegram, Slack, Signal, platforms that the federal government has little hope of regulating in this fashion. My second major concern is that the more that the federal government tries to help the media, the more it risks hurting our credibility. I respect that C-18 is attempting to create a framework that avoids direct subsidy, but this is not a neutral market-based approach. When the federal government tries to save the media become a legitimate target for partisan attacks, which undermines our fundamental democratic role and function. We saw a few examples of this very week, with the leader of the official opposition, Pierre Poilievre, raising money off of parliamentary press gallery reporter David Akin. Poilievre also took potshots at another journalist, Dale Smith, on Twitter. These attacks on media are strategic and they are popular. Journalists are not well liked by the general public who have a negative opinion of the press corps that is perceived to be on the take. I'm going to point to a Reuters Institute 2022 digital news report that noted that trust in Canadian media has sunk to its lowest point in 7 years, which is a continuation of a long-term downward trend. The opposition leader has therefore concluded that attacking us benefits him, and I don't think he's wrong in that calculation. To that end, I have real concerns about making media outlets dependent on revenue that is subject to the whims of the government in power. A future government, say one led by Mr. Poilievre, will have no compunctions about undoing C-18 and other subsidies. The industry's dependence on these revenue streams makes us pawns of partisan politics, whether we would wish to be or not. My last beef with C-18 is that it will inevitably favor incumbent media players over innovative models, small outlets, and new startups.
30 seconds, sorry, Ms. Gerson.
We saw, for example, that when a similar bill was enacted in Australia, the biggest beneficiaries were Murdoch entities. My last point very quickly is that I would point out that the appropriate mechanism by which the federal government should be dealing with issues like misinformation, disinformation in the media is through the CBC, not through creating an entirely separate legislative framework. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now go to Michael Geist. Mr. Geist, begin. 5 minutes, please.
All right, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Jerd Michael Geist, the law professor at the University of Ottawa, where I hold the Canada Research Chair in Internet and E-commerce Law, and I'm a member of the Center for Law, Technology and Society, appear in a personal capacity representing only my own views. With the start of the Jewish New Year about 48 hours away, I wanted to begin by thanking the committee for planning to look into the funding of an anti-Semite as part of Canadian Heritage's anti-hate program, and wanted to urge you to fully investigate both how this happened and to ensure that it never happens again. With respect to C18, as you may know, I've been fairly critical, but that criticism doesn't stem from doubts about the importance of a robust, diverse news sector. That success is critically important to ensuring an engaged, aware citizenry and holding our democratic institutions to account. Rather, I have concerns about the method of support. I've spoken positively about the government's tax-focused programs. And
point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Biggle?
Just for the translators, I think there's some poor audio quality coming through. I'm getting a thumbs up from the translators. So.
I shall pause then so we don't...
Okay, is that any better as I speak? Where with C18, with respect to how it's framed and drafted. I've got limited time, so let me highlight 4 issues. First, the use of the approach to the use of news articles extends far beyond what a reasonable person would consider use. Section 2 sub 2 covers both reproduction of any portion of a news article and facilitating access to news by any means. That means, the first part, that even reproducing a headline or sentence summary is covered, even though that form of use is freely permitted by copyright quotation rights under the Berne Convention. Second part means that linking or indexing to the front page of a news site, not even to an article, is treated as compensable activity. That just can't be right. Treating mere linking as a thing of value requiring compensation.
Point of order, Madam Chair. I think there is something wrong with the feed. I see Mr. Geist is frozen, and I believe online there's also an issue. Maybe we can check with the clerk and just see.
Right, I shall pause again and ask the interpreters and the clerk to double check, please. For 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to speak today, and greetings from Sydney. Look, my key message is that based on the Australian experience with its News Media Bargaining Code, Bill C18 should be strongly supported. I'm going to devote my introductory comments to explaining some aspects of the Australian Code and addressing a couple of criticisms of the Australian Code. The Code's objective was to address the massive imbalance in bargaining power between Australia's news media businesses and the platforms. Google and Facebook do need to have news on their platform to maximise user attention and so enhance their advertising revenue on which they depend. But they do not need the content of any particular news business. On the other hand, each media business needs to be on the platform. This bargaining imbalance or market failure means commercial deals cannot be done. They simply cannot be done to achieve fair payment for the benefit the platforms gain from news media content on their platform. The outcome is less journalism. Now, journalism benefits society in many ways, even for those who don't access it. It holds the powerful to account, provides a journal of record, a forum for ideas. While not all market failures need to be addressed, this one needed to be and was with the Australian Code. Prior to the Australian Code being passed, the news media businesses were simply unable to negotiate with the platforms for any payment for their content. With it, they could require the platforms to negotiate and trigger arbitration if those negotiations did not yield an appropriate result. The threat of arbitration evens up the bargaining power, as all parties wish to avoid having an arbitrator determine commercial arrangements. Australia's Code has been extremely successful in achieving its objective. From not being able to engage with the platforms because they wouldn't allow them to, the Australian news media businesses who have done deals under the Code are comfortable with them, and these deals are yielding well over $200 million per annum to the news businesses. Further, Google has now done deals with essentially all eligible media businesses, while Facebook has likely done deals with media businesses employing around 85% of Australian journalists. There are three essential features of the Australian Code, all of which seem to be in Bill C-18. First, if negotiations are unsuccessful, there is recourse to final offer arbitration. Secondly, non-discrimination, which means that if deals are done with one media business, then deals must be done with all. And third, the ability to collectively bargain. You may be aware that Google threatened to take Google Search out of Australia, and Facebook threatened to take down all news from its news feed if the Code's legislation proceeded. The legislation was passed, but both threats were not carried out. One outcome, however, was that the government said that if the platforms wished to avoid designation under the Code, they should go out and do deals. This they did, and quickly. That is, therefore, instead of the threat of arbitration driving commercial deals, it was the threat of designation that became important. The difference does not matter. The Code's objective of driving commercial deals was achieved. Now, let me just address two criticisms of the Code. Firstly, and it's just been said now, that it was only the large media players that got deals and that the smaller players missed out. This is just simply false. The facts are very clear. Australia has 4 roughly equal large news media businesses. They all got deals. It has a number of medium-sized businesses who all got a deal from Google, but 2 of them strangely did not get a deal with Facebook, while the rest did. So most of them got a deal with Facebook, but not all. And we have many smaller media businesses, especially small regional and rural newspapers and digital natives. Essentially, all of them got a deal from Google, and most of them got a deal from Facebook. The amounts paid per journalist were usually much larger for the smaller businesses. Indeed, Country Press Australia, which represents 180 rural publications, received possibly the highest payment per journalist employed.
15 seconds, Professor Sims, please.
Second, some say the money did not generate extra jobs in journalism. That's not true. It did. You can see that everywhere. As one example, The Guardian Australia increased its employment by 50%, essentially because of payments under the Code. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, albeit virtually, and thanks very much to your excellent IT team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Sims. And please remember that we're going to have a question and answer period, so we need you to hang on there for the rest of the meeting. Thank you. Clerk, are we ready for Dr. Geist?
I see the Dr. Geist is back on. Dr. Geist, can you say a word?
Yeah, I could say a few words. Hopefully things are working and clear. Sorry for all the problems.
Yes.
All right. So that I will...
Hold on. Well, the clerk's giving a funny face. Is that all right? I was like, I can keep talking for a minute. That didn't look encouraging.
You have
My
2
apologies.
minutes and 50 seconds, Mr. Geist.
Thank you.
I already said that, so
Madam-
if the clerk
No, I
says
know.
it's okay to go, I shall
Yeah.
let you begin.
Madam Chair,
Thank you.
it's Kevin Waugh on the floor. You know, we've had so many multiple interruptions with Dr. Geist. Could we go back to the 4 minutes? You know, I think it would be fair. Go back because we've had 2 or 3 interruptions already, and we do need to hear from Dr. Geist. And we've had so many interruptions. I think if you went back to the, you know, after his first introduction would be fine. But I think it's fair to say the 4-minute mark and let him go from there.
Mr. Waugh has made a comment, Kevin. So do I hear anyone objecting to this?
No, we
Seeing
agree.
And
We agree.
hearing, everyone agrees. So I shall start you at 4 minutes, Dr. Geist, and we shall go with that. Begin, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. I'm hoping this will work. I'll just go directly to the 4 issues I wanted to raise. First, the approach to the use of news in news articles.
Point of
extends
order.
far
Règlement,
beyond-
Madame la Présidente.
Point of order, Madam Chair. The sound is just as bad as it was earlier.
Again, clerk, interpreters, sorry, not interpreters, IT, is everything okay on your end? Obviously, the problem is on Dr. Geist's end. I don't know whether you can change your speaker or your
Let me do
thing.
that.
All right, let's try that. I'm holding your place.
Thank you. Give me 1 second. Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you fine. And so it's up to the floor and to everyone else. Anyone have a problem with hearing that? No? So let's try it again. Please begin, Dr. Geist.
Awesome. Sorry. Many appearances, the first time it's happened this bad. Okay. First, my concern is the approach to the use of news in news articles extends far beyond what a reasonable person would consider use. Section 2 sub 2 covers both reproduction of any portion of a news article and facilitating access to news by any means. First part means that even reproducing a news headline or sentence summary is covered, even though that form of use is freely permitted by copyright quotation rights under the Berne Convention. The second part means that linking or indexing to the front page of a news site, not even to an article, is treated as compensable activity. That just can't be right. Treating mere linking as a thing of value requiring compensation runs counter to Supreme Court jurisprudence on the importance of linking and threatens the lifeblood of the free flow of information on the internet. If Google or Facebook copied and distributed full articles, I could understand the arguments around compensation. Indeed, those companies have struck deals in Canada to pay for exactly that. But when Dr. Fry posts a link on her Facebook to an MSN.ca article, or Mr. Julian posts a link on his Facebook to a Canadian Press article, as they did this summer like millions of other Canadians, I don't think we are anywhere near a making available news standard that should require compensation. Second, the government has claimed the bill involves minimal market intervention. Yet the reality is that there are an astonishing numbers of standards and bargaining rules established by the government or the CRTC in the bill, which has a real-world impact on government interference blurring the news editorial and business divides. Third, at a time when there are rightly concerns about misinformation and low-quality news sources, Bill C-18 risks increased misinformation. For example, the definition of news content contains no standards or links to professional journalism. Instead, the definition, which I should note is different in the English and French language versions of the bill, could incorporate blog posts, opinion pieces, and other content. The government's approach on qualified Canadian journalism organizations has detailed guidance on what constitutes news to ensure that tax breaks go to high-quality original journalism. Bill C-18 does the opposite. Moreover, the bill creates potential liability for platforms that use algorithms to demote content. To be clear, we need greater algorithmic transparency, but the provision on undue preferences may mean that platforms refrain from demoting low-quality journalism for fear of liability. Fourth, the bill is offside several treaty and constitutional obligations. For example, Section 24, which excludes copyright limitations and exceptions from the bargaining process, may violate Article 10 sub 1 of the Berne Convention, which has a mandatory right of quotation that expressly includes newspaper articles. Further, the bill is filled with potential CUSMA challenges. For example, Section 51 of the bill features what amounts to a must-carry obligation designed to prevent a platform from refusing to link to third-party content. While self-dealing measures targeting anti-competitive conduct by the platforms is welcome,
30 seconds.
These provisions go beyond that and are vulnerable under CUSMA's performance requirements under 14.10. With regard to constitutional concerns, the bill isn't broadcast, it isn't telecommunications, and it's not copyright. How then does it fit within federal powers? The government claims powers over anything involving the internet. There are no real limits on jurisdiction. And as for the charter statement, it inaccurately claims that the bill supports news organizations when the internet platforms monetize their content, even though that's not what the bill says or provides. I thank you for your patience with the technical problems, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Geist. And I now move to Hebdo's Quebec. And there are two of you present, Monsieur Chartier and Madame Poisson. Oh, Monsieur Poisson. Only one of you may speak for 5 minutes, please. Or you can split it into 250 if you wish. Yeah. So who will be speaking?
Me.
Mr. Chartier, all
yes,
right?
we will split the speech, all right?
Oui, commencez.
Okay.
Yes, please begin. My name is Benoit Chartier. I'm chair of the board of directors of Hebdo Québec, or Quebec Weeklies. With me is our general manager, Mr. Sylvain Poisson. We represent more than 30 owners of independent weekly newspapers, which include nearly 80 weeklies across the province of Quebec. All of these print media benefit from an online platform. I myself we represent about 200 journalists in the province of Quebec. I own and publish in 5 weeklies and a website, including the oldest French language newspaper in America, which is Le Courrier de Saint-Hyacinthe, which celebrated its 170th anniversary this year. Without exception, Hebdo Québec creates or produces original, local and/or regional content for each of our news products, from our respective newsrooms, with a total of nearly 200 journalists, as I mentioned. We distribute some 10.3 million copies per year throughout our territories, and our digital platforms have a total of more than 20 million page views per month and close to 15 million separate visitors per month. Hebdo Québec celebrated its 90th birthday this year, and the best possible gift would be the adoption of C-18 as soon as possible. The press is a bulwark of democracy. It has a duty to the public to provide quality information supported by journalistic rigor. The weekly French language press in Quebec has played a fundamental role in delivering information to the heart of many local communities, often in areas where there is no other local or regional media. In this context, it can be said that a weakened press, threatened with abandoning its mission and disappearing after decades of existence, is seriously endangering our democracy. Newspapers are part of the economic and cultural landscape, some for nearly a century, and they are essential to democracy. Outside of major centers, they are often the only ones to play such a role, and their relevance remains as great as it was before the advent of social networks. Local and regional weeklies have a crucial role to play in mitigating the unbridled flow of information devoid of true journalistic practices and ethics on social networks. Already reeling from the major media crisis, we have had to deal with the aftermath of a lengthy pandemic of business closures, further declines in advertising revenues, staffing issues, restructuring of operations and newsrooms, to name a few. I would like to sincerely thank the Canadian government for its support and invaluable assistance during these difficult economic and personal circumstances. That said, over the past few years, the crisis has been exacerbated by the arrival of web giants like Facebook and Google. Content aggregators, which the internet gave birth to, have multiplied at very little cost without producing original content, with little or no investment in journalistic resources, and few ethical rules for information. Some news sites and the proliferation of social networks encourage the mixing of genres, but not the credibility of sources. They disseminate rumors or fake news. And this famous fake news has overrun networks and goes against the responsible, accountable press and journalistic rigor that we ardently defend. Web giants have cannibalized our revenues without assuming any of the social and fiscal responsibilities that go with it by controlling the algorithms. They have disrupted the business model and diminished the real value of information. Above all, they succeeded in attracting 80% of advertising investments of local and regional businesses without any tangible benefits in the communities. In just a few years, without any tax contribution, these web giants have eroded the revenues of traditional media that for decades have invested time and money in their communities, encouraged their professionals, supported their institutions, and served the public interest of their fellow citizens. We therefore support Bill C-18's approach to addressing the market imbalance between global web platforms and news media publishers. In our view, collective bargaining is the only way to mitigate this clear power imbalance. In a poll conducted by Polara Strategic Insights on behalf of Infomedia Canada last May, 90% of Canadians believe it's important for local media to survive. 79% agree that web giants should share their revenues with Canadian media. I think everything has been said.
Merci, Mr. Chartier.
Thank you, Mr. Chartier.
Next witness will be News Media Canada. And again, there are three people, David Scott, Paul Deegan, and Jamie Irving. And one of you or all of you can divide up your time, but you still only have 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, it's Anthony. Madam Chair, I just wanted to mention Mr. Scott is not from News Media Canada. There seems to be an error on the list.
Ah.
He's a separate witness.
All right. Well, then, before we go to News Media Canada, Mr. Scott, what is your... Who do you represent, please?
I represent The Logic.
The Logic. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you. Now, Mr. Scott, begin, please. 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Bonjour. Madam Chair, members of the committee, and your incredible IT team. I don't want to be here. My job is to report on what you do here. It's certainly not to be a part of it. And yet, I feel like I don't have a choice. I founded The Logic almost 5 years ago, and we are Canada's leading business and tech newsroom. As an independent publisher with no lobbyists, no trade association backing, and no allegiance to any startup or legacy interests, but with 25 years of experience as a journalist, I'm one of the few people that can speak frankly about what's at stake with Bill C-18. The Fourth Estate is a key part of a functioning democracy, and ours is in crisis. We know the depressing stats about the decline in original in-depth reporting in Canada. All you need to do is take a cursory glance at your own news feeds to see that there is no shortage of hot takes or articles amplifying hot takes on Twitter. You know this. It frustrates you, too. By contrast, brave and substantive reporting is critical to a high-functioning democracy, and unlike reporting on those Twitter fights That reporting costs money and time to produce. I have dedicated my life to this pursuit, which is why I'm here. The Logic invests heavily in journalism that makes Canada a better place to live and work by facilitating hard conversations through rich investigative and analytical reporting. These stories can be national in scope, like an investigative series on how Canada's charitable sector allocates its funding, or they can be local, like how automation is impacting the community of Brooks, Alberta. Just this week, we launched a 6-part series examining the strains in Canada's supply chains, beginning with an on-the-ground report from the Port of Vancouver. This is vital work. And yet, because of the money already being paid by large tech companies to a select few Canadian publishers, we are now operating in an anti-competitive market that privileges some and risks starving this country's journalism ecosystem of the innovation it so desperately needs. Day in and day out, our world-class team is paving a path for others to follow. What began 5 years ago with 3 people is now a national newsroom with almost 24 reporters across the country in 6 bureaus. This includes one of the only remaining English language bureaus in Quebec. After decades of watching newsrooms cut their core product, The Logic is proof that you can put journalism and journalists at the center of your company. And make no mistake, our competitors watch us closely. That is a good thing. That is how competition is supposed to work. It makes everyone better. Innovation takes time, yes, but it also requires a level playing field. We did not ask for any of this, and yet the secret deals already struck by Meta and Google have created a market imbalance that gives competitors an unfair advantage in the war for talent, audience, and distribution. When The Logic tries to compete on merit against a publication bankrolled by the wealthiest family in Canada, one now being further underwritten by secret deals with the world's largest companies, how does that help foster journalism innovation? The Online News Act seeks to rectify this imbalance. It is a backstop, forcing publishers and platforms to come to the table for fair, equitable, and transparent agreements that don't privilege only those with negotiating power. C-18 is a pro-competition bill. But it is also good for journalism. Without regulation, publishers that have already signed these secret deals are depending on the good faith of big tech firms to keep them in place. As an editor, I have some questions. How much are those deals worth? What is that money bought? What will happen when it's time to renew those deals? How can these tech giants be reported on fairly when publishers rely on those same companies to meet payroll? Currently, we cannot answer any of those questions because they're all covered under non-disclosure agreements. Bill C-18 forces those deals out in the open, and that is good for journalism. As the saying goes, sunlight is the best disinfectant. I am optimistic about the future of our craft. It takes time for news to regenerate. It takes time for young journalists to relearn what has been lost after decades of job cuts. And it takes time for today's startups to turn into tomorrow's leaders. If there's one thing that I hope you can take away from me today, it's that all of this much-needed innovation requires a level playing field. Bill C-18 seeks to correct an existing imbalance, which is why it needs to pass. With that, I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you very much. And I apologize for lumping you in with the News Media Canada. I don't know if either of you are happy about that. So then next we will go to News Media Canada, and we have Mr. Deegan and Mr. Irving, and whichever one of you, 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's Paul Deegan. Bon après-midi. Au nom du...
Good afternoon. On behalf of News Media Canada, our members, and the 3,000 journalists that we represent, we are pleased to participate in your study on Bill C-18.
2021 election campaign, the Liberals, the Conservatives, and the New Democrats all made commitments to introduce news media legislation. Why do we need this legislation? First, the need for strong, independent, local news has never been higher. It keeps communities connected and informed on issues that are impacting them directly. Covering City Hall, provincial and territorial legislatures, our courts, and indeed holding you, our parliamentarians, to account is vital to our democracy. Second, there is a significant imbalance of power between tech giants and Canadian news outlets. To put this in perspective, the market cap of Google is roughly $1.8 trillion. That's trillion with a T. Meta is over $500 billion. Together, that's in the ballpark of Canada's annual GDP. Together, these companies' take of online ad revenues stands at more than 80%. Third, with the prospect of legislation, Google and Meta started picking winners and losers, and David alluded to this earlier. They started negotiating content licensing agreements with a dozen or so publishers, including Le Devoir, the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star, and most recently, Google did a deal with Postmedia. Don't get us wrong, we're happy for our member publishers. They should be getting compensated for their content. But we now have a situation of haves and have-nots among Canada's news publisher. That's not fair, especially to smaller publishers who have been left out in the cold. Publishers like Benoit Chartier, who you heard from a moment ago. And again, it's important to remember, Benoit runs the oldest French language newspaper in North America. It's been around since 1853. There's other publications that are hugely important to our country. La Liberté in Manitoba that Sophie Golin runs. That's an important publication. You know, they don't have Google or Facebook knocking on their door. We've got Dave Adset, who runs the Wellington Advertiser, and Mr. Nader's writing. These are all very important publications to the communities, and they also need to get content licensing agreements. Let me outline 3 reasons why we support this legislation. First, it allows us to negotiate collectively. Currently, the Competition Act bars us from forming a collective. Given the overwhelming power imbalance, we'll be in a stronger bargaining position if we can negotiate together. Deuxièmement.
Secondly, it includes an enforcement mechanism. Baseball-style final offer arbitration ensures that parties put their best offer forward and the arbitrator picks one or the other. The hammer of arbitration incentivizes both sides to reach a fair settlement.
Similar legislation is working in Australia. As Rod Sims just shared with us, the amounts paid to news organizations in his countries total over $200 million. But more important than how much is who that money is going to. Sure, large organizations are benefiting the most on a total dollar basis. That's understandable. Australia has one of the most concentrated media markets in the world. But others, like Country Press Australia, an affiliation of 160 to 80 smaller regional publications, were able to reach settlements with Google and Meta. And more recently, a group of 24 small Australian publishers reached a deal with Google. In an article written by Bill Gruskin of Columbia Journalism School, he refers to a professor in Sydney who says that she can't believe the opportunities that exist right now. Her students aren't taking internships because it's so easy for them now to land full-time jobs. She said, I swear to God, I haven't seen it like this in 20 years, and that's because of the code that Rod Sims put in. As a matter of principle, we believe that publishers, large and small, should benefit equally from any settlement based on their proportionate investment in newsroom employees, not in corporate overhead. We've developed an approach that we believe is transparent and fair to members of News Media Canada and the National Ethnic and Media Press Council. Simply put, any monies from collective negotiation would be shared among publishers on a pro rata basis based on their salaries and wages paid to eligible newsroom employees.
30 seconds.
And that's a number that's already provided to the CRA. In conclusion, Google and Meta have important roles to play in the news media ecosystem going forward. It's in their self-interest to have rich, trusted content that our journalists produce. But at the same time, they enjoy a dominant position in the marketplace where search and social are designed to keep user within a walled garden where they extract value from content. We simply want the value for that content to be compensated for it so that we can reinvest in our newsrooms. Merci.
Thank you. And we look forward to the rest of the discussion.
Thank you very much. And that ends our witnesses, and we will be moving on to the question and answer session. Now, the first round is going to be 6 minutes. That 6 minutes includes question and includes answer. So I'd like everybody to be as succinct as you possibly can be. And we begin the 6 minute round, starting with the Conservative Party, John Nater.
Thank
Go ahead,
you,
John.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, thank you to our witnesses for joining us this afternoon. Certainly a varied amount of opinions and commentary, which is always nice to hear when we're discussing important legislation such as this one. I want to start with a couple of questions to Dr. Geist as well as to Ms. Gerson. Both of you mentioned in your opening statements the idea of the value proposition or where the intrinsic value comes from. I know, Dr. Geist, you talked about the difference between reproduction versus facilitating access. Both of you, made various commentary related to that kind of side of things. So I want to start with Professor Geist. Could you expand on that a little bit in terms of where this bill may be going down, perhaps a slightly a skewed path in terms of where the funding will be directed to?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. So I think we've heard several witnesses emphasize that their materials, their work, their news content is being used, and they should be compensated for that. Now, if this was use in the way that I think most Canadians would consider use, Google or Facebook or whomever is copying their articles, reproducing them, running ads against them, one can well understand why that would be the conclusion. But the definition that is used in this legislation goes far, far beyond that. It speaks merely to facilitating access to news, putting it in an index with even just a portion of a work. And so if you link to the front page of the Globe and Mail or the National Post or the Toronto Star, which has some articles there, that's facilitating access to news. If you've got merely a link to it uploaded by a member of this committee or myself or someone else, that link is considered facilitating access to news. I don't think that's use in the way that people would think of it. And when we say that publishers aren't being paid fairly, that's the kind of thing that they shouldn't be paid for. There's no copyrights in it. It's not being used in a way. And so if we're talking about compensating for use, the legislation ought to reflect that. And I don't believe the definition that we have comes anywhere near close to doing that.
Thank you, Professor Geist. Ms. Gerson, did you have any comments on that matter as well?
Yeah, I mean, I wish that we could be a little bit more candid about what we're talking about. When we say that Google and Facebook are in competition with news media outlets, we're not in competition for content, we're in competition for ad revenue. That's why the business media's business model fell apart. It wasn't because Google and Facebook started stealing the content, it's because Google and Facebook started providing a better platform for which individuals could advertise on. They managed to provide more attention. So, I wish we could just be a little bit more candid about that. The second thing I would point out is, last I checked, something of 4 out of every 1,000 links shared on Facebook are news content. Most links are cat videos, pictures to kids, The idea that Facebook in particular needs us. I think that if you believe that, you are setting yourself up for a financial fall. You are going to make yourself dependent on a business that doesn't need you. Now Google may be a little bit different. However, we all remember the fables of social media platforms like MySpace and other types of things. We know that these things have a bit of a temporary temporary lifespan. And we also know that, people evolve in their social media use and their social media habits. So what are you going to do when Facebook increasingly is the place for, boomers sharing cat videos, and most of the internet activity is happening on forums like Discord and Telegraph and other types of semi-private organizations, and that's where links are being shared, if they're being shared at all. So, I think that bluntly, you're setting yourself up for a dependency on an ad revenue that can't and won't be sustainable in the long run. I have some real concerns about that. And sorry, I'm a little bit ill at the moment, but Mr. Nader, if there's any other questions that you have to that effect, I'd be happy to answer them.
Oh, no, thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you taking time, even if you're feeling unwell today. That's that we do thank you for that. And I'm going to have to go find my password for my MySpace page to see what's ever happened to it over the last 15 years. I want to carry on with a couple questions. Under this bill, it envisions that the CBC, the national broadcaster, would be included in it. I find it interesting as well. This program will be administered by the CRTC, which just last week the governor and council sent back the CBC's license renewal to the CRTC. So interesting, the government doesn't agree with the CRTC's decision on that, but then is also at the same time putting the CRTC in charge of it. So perhaps I'll start with Professor Geist, and I'll see how much time I have left. But what are your thoughts on
you have 57 seconds.
57 seconds, lots of time. The inclusion of the public broadcaster within this, but also B, the CRTC as the one to administer it. So I'll start with Professor Geist, and perhaps Ms. Gerson would have a couple minutes or a couple seconds as well.
Okay, I'll try to go quickly. I'll start with the CRTC by saying that I don't think this is the CRTC's bailiwick in terms of the role that it plays. It sets an enormous number of standards, and I think there's reason for concern for that role. I think, frankly, more broadly, the inclusion of broadcasters here is problematic. Frankly, there is another example, actually, of different definitions in the English language version of the bill and the French language bill with respect to broadcasting. So it's something the committee should take a look at. But beyond that, if you talk to a lot of the local digital first operators, they will tell you the CBC is a competitor of theirs in those local communities. And to provide them with additional revenue effectively forces their hand. Even if those small and independent players don't want the money, they've got little choice but to participate in this system. It's basically forced negotiation for those kinds of companies too.
Sorry, Professor Geist, and we have no time, John, for Ms. Gerson. So perhaps you can get back to that in your 5-minute round. I will now move to the Liberals. Lisa Hepner. 6 minutes, Lisa.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very pleased to be here with my colleagues today, particularly for this bill.
But it bears repeating. I was also a news journalist from 1999 up until just last year when I decided to serve my community in a different way, working in both print newspapers like the Edmonton Journal and the Hamilton Spectator, and later for broadcasters. And over that time, I saw firsthand the decline in journalism, not just in the numbers of publications and broadcasters in communities, but in the numbers of people in the newsrooms, from hundreds literally down to a handful. And that affected the number of people that would be at the meetings, at the courthouse, in the city halls, telling the stories of the people, the things that bring a community together and make it feel like a community. And so watching this firsthand, I have become very concerned about the threat to our democracy. And I was extremely interested to see in Australia, that country taking the lead and addressing this, what we've heard as an imbalance. And I'm very grateful that we have the architect of that legislation here with us today. And so I would like to start with you, Mr. Sims. Tell us what life is like for journalists in Australia today compared to what it was like before this legislation. And I know we've heard a little bit about this from other witnesses as well as yourself today, but really, like, today it's kind of tough to keep a job in journalism, but I'm wondering what it's like in Australia.
Look, it's transformed the journalism landscape in Australia. It's gone from pessimism to optimism. We've got different readouts on how, where money's gone, but I mentioned The Guardian, a 50% increase. And The Guardian is a new player to Australia. They're about a middle-sized player. They're, of course, backed up by Guardian UK, but it has helped them enormously get into new areas. It's also helped the Australian Broadcasting Commission get into a range of regional media, but just the general sense of journalism is that there's jobs now, there's a sense of optimism. Previously, there was a profound sense of pessimism.
And I take it that even small publications and broadcasters have benefited from your legislation.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. There's a lot of misinformation around, but Google has done a deal with everybody who's eligible. Facebook just about, although there's some weird exceptions. But in terms of the smaller players, in my view, Country Press Australia, which I think has got about 180 very small publications. I mean, you're talking about a couple of journalists in many of them. And per journalist, they got by far the best deal. But many other small players have got deals, organisations you just haven't heard of, because we've got a lot of new digital natives in Australia, as well as the traditional press. Australian community media, of course, got deals with both players. So the smaller media companies have really benefited, and it's enabling them to thrive in a way that they just couldn't before. So this is a myth that it's only helped the large. That's just complete misinformation.
And I understand Australia is currently reviewing its law. What do you see as the improvements that could be made?
Well, from my point of view, one improvement could be a bit more transparency. I was at the ACCC, and through the ACCC and my own contacts, in touch with all the media companies. And so that's why I'm able to be completely confident the deals were well over 200 million. They were well over that before the most recent round of deals, which I think someone referred to. But a bit more transparency in aggregate terms about how much money is being paid and where it's going would be helpful, provided it's at an aggregate level and not disclosing individual deals. So I think that part of Bill C-18 is very helpful.
So you would look to C-18 as an improvement on your legislation?
Look, I haven't been line by line through it, but I think the high-level aspects of transparency, again, provided it's done at an aggregate level, is an improvement, yes.
Do you have any reaction to some of the criticism that you've heard from other witnesses this afternoon?
Well, I think there's some misunderstandings around. I mean, what's really happened here is that Google and Facebook have interposed themselves between media and their audiences. There's no doubt Google and Facebook benefit from news media. You don't have to advertise against it to benefit. You just get eyeballs to your site. That's how they make money. They provide free services and make money through targeted advertising. They haven't replaced journalism. They're just destroying journalism. So that may be too strong a term, but they're certainly damaging it. So this isn't about, this is about journalism, and it's being damaged by Facebook and Google having business models that provide free services to get eyeballs for targeted advertising. Extremely lucrative businesses. But my point is, by getting free services, then Google and Facebook aren't paying for any content either. And that's the problem. They're taking content, they're monetizing it, and not getting paid for it.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Professor Sims. Lisa, you have gone over time. Okay.
It was worth it. Thank you, Chair.
It was worth it. All right.
My fault,
now, I'm going to go to the block for Martin Champeau. Martin, 6 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the witnesses who are with us today for this study on Bill C-18. A bill that was very highly anticipated by media in Quebec, print media, and also media across Canada. So we're delighted to have you with us today so we can discuss this. First, I would like to ask a question to Mr. Chartier and Mr. Poisson from Hebdo Québec or Quebec Weeklies. I don't know which of you would like to answer, but the question is the following. Now, I was listening to Ms. Garrison's opening statement that C-18 was based on lies and that media are using all of their efforts to take advantage of these platforms. I would like for you to tell us your point of view from print media. You represent local media. Can you tell us about the economic situations of these organizations, in particular in Quebec, but I think it's similar to what's happening elsewhere in Canada? Yes, Mr. Champoux, I will answer the question. I was listening to the earlier witness, and it is completely false. I can't understand someone saying such a thing. There are criticisms on Hebdo-Québec. There is a serious erosion of ad revenues. This is having a strong impact on our revenues and on our capacity to employ journalists across Quebec. And I don't think news deserts, which are a result, are in any way good for Canadian or Quebec democracy. I publish in a newspaper that has been around for 170 years. My family is involved with it. And in the past years, the situation has become so critical for regional weekly press in Quebec. And Bill C-18, to us, is a question of survival, simply put. If C-18 does not come into effect as a law in Canada, the situation will become increasingly dangerous for the survival of journalists and Quebec print media. That's how I can answer. Could I add something? Yes, please go ahead, Mr. Poisson. Strong words are being used, such as lies, cat videos, and certain platforms like Discord and Telegraph are mentioned, and they reach only about 0.5 or 1% of users of social media. And these words are used why? They're used to normalize or to downplay the impacts of these web giants. Facebook and Google invested just as much time and money in the past years to work against our efforts and against C-18. They have acted in all number of ways. And if their impact on news media was not so great, they would not have made such an effort to act against this. I would like to speak to Mr. Sims next. Mr. Sims, you're with us today, and it is 4:15 in the morning in Australia at present, so I would like to congratulate you for being in such good form at this hour of the day. I would like to talk about Ms. Garrison's speech. It struck me when she said that Google and Facebook, if we act against them, could pull news media off of their platforms altogether. And this could lead in more money being paid to large media companies to the detriment of smaller news companies. Based on your experience in Australia, is that argument valid?
Thank you. So Google and Facebook do need media. There's just no doubt about that. Obviously, Google more clearly so, but also Facebook. They used to call it Newsfeed. It's now just called Feed, and I think there's an obvious reason why they've changed that name. But they want eyeballs. They need media because people will do searches on both Facebook and Google. In terms of the size of media, there's just no doubt that the beneficiaries of these sorts of bills are the smaller players. The larger ones, which have name recognition, can do better on subscriptions. The smaller ones absolutely cannot. So this sort of legislation does help the smaller players disproportionately more, and that's certainly been the Australian experience. I hope that answers the question if I followed it.
Oui. 37 seconds, Martin.
Je vais essayer d'en profiter pour continuer.
I would like to continue with Mr. Sims. There is a complaint that comes up, and you just made reference to it. So smaller players in media businesses have a harder time negotiating than larger companies. In Australia, have smaller companies been able to negotiate individually and conclude deals, or do they absolutely have to bargain collectively?
Please be concise, Mr. Sims.
Understood, Chair. Look, roughly half of them have got together and bargained collectively, and the rest have done deals individually. It's been their choice whether they feel they have the capacity, but the really small ones have had to bargain collectively. But that's worked fine.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Sims.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. And I'm now going to go to the next round, which is for the New Democratic Party, Peter Julian. Peter, 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thanks to all of our witnesses for being here today. These are very important hearings, and you've all added substantially, I think, to our considerations around C18. Professor Sims, I'd like to go to you first, and thank you for being up at 4 in the morning in Australia. You did talk in your presentation about the 4 media giants having signed agreements that the medium-sized media companies had for the most part. You said not in all cases. And then you said for smaller media companies, there are some agreements with Facebook and Google, but not in all cases. I'd like you, if you could, to give us more details on that. The issue of ensuring that small papers is something that certainly concerns me. I mean, my area in New Westminster Burnaby, we've lost half of the publications over the course of the last few years. It's just been devastating for local community events. And we have 2 cities that collectively are about 1/3 of a million people, so we're not an insignificant market at all. But we've been devastated in the way so many parts of the country have been devastated. Can you give us some examples of the smaller media players? How much of that $200 million has gone to medium and small players, and what you would suggest in terms of improvements to this legislation to ensure that the small community players, the community newspapers and community media actually fully benefit, as you say, has largely happened in Australia?
So Google has done deals with, as I say, essentially everybody. So large, medium, and small. Facebook has done deals with the 4 larger players, and I think virtually all of the smaller players, but there's a few very small ones left out. But they've certainly done deals with Country Press Australia, and they've done deals with Australian Community Media, and they've done deals with a whole lot of other players who I won't mention because you would never have heard of them. So Facebook's main area they haven't done deals is with 2 medium-sized players. One is the Special Broadcasting Service, which is a multicultural service owned by the government. And I think there's a chance that Facebook will now be designated under the code, which would force them to do those deals. So I think the way the Canadian legislation is worded would ensure that large, medium and small get deals. So I just don't see a problem there. The small players have certainly done very well in Australia. As to how much of that money went to them, I'm afraid I just cannot do that off the top of my head. And also some of the arrangements are confidential, so I can't do it anyway. What I can say is you are talking a significant amount of that 200 million has gone to smaller players. And, if you talk to Country Press Australia, it represents 180 rural and regional, really small players. They're independently owned, and they have done extremely well. Any of those players would be extremely complimentary of the benefits they've got from the code.
And please excuse our ignorance about the Australian media landscape, but Country Press Australia, is it an association that includes small independent newspapers from the Northern Territory, right. And so it's not a conglomerate. It's an association of small players.
That's right. It's banded together As an industry association, it's got about 60 owners of those 180 publications, and it is just that. It's an industry organisation. It's absolutely not a conglomerate. Each of those 180 businesses are very small, and as I say, there's about 60 owners of them.
Thank you for that. Your depth of knowledge is very, very impressive. Is it possible for you to provide to the committee later? I know you've made an estimate of $200 million in benefit that go to media on an annual basis, and I understand that that's an estimate because some of the agreements are confidential. But is it possible for you to provide to the committee, perhaps later on, a rough estimate of how much has gone to the 4 conglomerates and how much have gone to medium-sized players? And then Country Press Australia, for example, that's very intriguing to me because those are the folks that I'm primarily concerned with, the local journalists, so that we can get a sense of how the benefits may have been distributed. You're right to point out there's a lot of misinformation around this bill, but it's also, I think, appropriate for us, since Australia was the pioneer, to get the solid information that helps to counter the misinformation.
Look, the problem is there has been a lot of confidentiality arrangements. We've got the numbers. I've got the numbers because the ACCC had conversations with many of the media just trying to get a ballpark estimate of where things were, not above this, not below that, those sorts of conversations. So unlike the Canadian bill, there isn't that ability to have the transparency. So it is just very hard to do that. But if you were to talk to Country Press Association, Country Press Australia, talk to private media, Schwartz Media, the range of smaller players, Australian Community Media. I mean, the two main ones, Australian Community Media and Country Press Australia, they might well give you the details in a way that I cannot, I'm afraid, just because of the arrangements we have. But they are both on the record as being very pleased with their deals, and certainly that their commentary can be provided, but I'm afraid the details of the deals cannot.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sims, and thank you, Peter. Your time is up. Now, looking at the clock, we only have time for one more round, and that's going to be the 5-minute round. And so I'll begin with the Conservative Party of Canada, Rachel Thomas, for 5 minutes, please, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you. My first question is for Dr. Geist. Dr. Geist, I'm just noting here around the table, Mr. Sims has said that Bill C-18 is about protecting journalism. Others at the table have said that it's about protecting democracy. I'm just wondering if you care to comment based on your expertise.
Yeah, thank you for that. I would say this, listen, if this was a bill about journalism, I think there'd be a lot more support for it. We should be clear, it's not. It mentions the word journalism once, with respect to qualified journalism organizations. It has 3 sections that mention journalists. It's not about journalism or journalists. It's about funding some of these legacy media organizations. In fact, there are no standards with respect to journalism at all. And you need to contrast that with what the government has approved with QCGOs, the Qualified Canadian Journalism Organizations, which sets a wide range of standards to ensure what you are producing and incentivizing the production of is high quality journalism. There is none of that in this legislation. And so with the low standards of allowing entry into to qualify for this, what you are effectively doing is incentivizing clickbait, low quality journalism that people will get paid on the basis of clicks because they can demand to be part of this table through the collective bargaining, as you just heard. And when we look to platforms to try to meet that out, to use the algorithms to prioritize the high quality journalism and demote the low quality journalism, legislation hits you again, creating potential liability where they demote that. And so the danger here is that we are not going to be supporting high quality journalism. We'll be supporting some legacy companies, to be sure. But if this was really about journalism, one would have thought you'd actually mention it in the bill more than a couple of times.
Thank you, Dr. Geist. I just want to expand on that or take it in a slightly different direction, but I think it also has to do with that. And that is, one of the things that you've pointed out as well is the lack of clarity in terms of terms used within this bill. For example, news content. You've gone on to question whether or not Bill C-18 is even constitutional. So I'm wondering what impact would this lack of clarity have, and why do you think we're in this situation? We've been here before. We've seen this with other bills where the Liberal government has just said, trust us, just trust us. So just wondering if you care to comment on that.
Sure. So there are problems even within the bill. I've already noted there are at least a couple of examples, and there may well be others, where the English version and the French version don't align, creating potential confusion as to what actually is intended by the government as part of this bill. But beyond that, it is vulnerable with respect to our agreement with the United States quite clearly. It is vulnerable with respect to our international obligations under copyright. I must say, I find it astonishing that we would effectively say that certain parties don't have rights of quotation. Essentially, you have to set it aside for the purposes of negotiation. This is a must-have within international copyright law, and yet that's been excluded. I should note that is something that you do not find in the Australian legislation. That's a made-in-Canada violation of the international law. And then from a constitutional perspective, I struggle to see how this even fits within traditional powers of the federal government, because as I say, not broadcast, not telecom, not copyright, news isn't something that is traditionally within that purview. So what's the likely outcome of this? There is no question but that this will be challenged on a number of different levels. And so the idea that this will result in fast agreements and fast payouts strike me as exceptionally unlikely.
Thank you very much, Dr. Geist. I'm just, I have about a minute and 20 seconds left here. I'm going to go to Ms. Garrison for a moment here. If I was to define the central point of your opening statement, it was that there is a massively detrimental impact of government interference with regard to journalism and media. Essentially what I hear you saying is if you get rid of the government, you bring back trust, both the trust of the public, which is waning right now because they perceive the media as being bought off and not reporting stories correctly. Politicians raise many of those same concerns. And so it would seem then that if we want a true return to democracy and democratic principles being protected, we should allow the media to function independent of government. Ms. Garrison, I'm wondering if you can comment on this further or expand on your point.
I am a small media organization, and I don't want money through this program, and I don't want money through this government. I want to be able to be a self-sustaining business. Now, I have to take some exception because I think some of the witnesses here have misrepresented what I've said. Mr. Sims, I didn't say that only money went to Murdoch organizations. I said that the bulk of the money went to Murdoch-based organizations, and your testimony says that, I don't know. Do you think that the bulk of the money in this Canadian law isn't going to go to zombie organizations like Post Media? Of course it will. Because they have the legal, they have the size, the mass, the incumbency, and the legal ability to be able to negotiate for more. Secondly, I didn't say that it was a lie that media organizations were struggling. Of course they're struggling. We all know that. What is a lie here is that it's the media organizations that don't benefit from the links involved. The media organizations.
Thank you, Ms. Gerson.
Benefit from the links.
Time is up. Thank you. And now I go to the Liberals. Anthony Housefather for 5 minutes, Anthony.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and I just want to thank all the witnesses for being here today. Particularly, I want to thank Mr. Sims, who's up very early in the morning in Australia. And for those of you that don't know, Mr. Sims was called the most feared man in Australian business by the Australian Financial Review. So quite an impressive witness we have. I also want to take this opportunity to wish Mr. Skok, Dr. Geist, and everyone in Canada's Jewish community a very happy New Year, which starts on Sunday night. So let me come to my first question. Mr. Skok, I'm going to go to you. Dr. Geist just said that this is not about journalism. Do you think this bill is about journalism?
Yes.
Mr. Deegan, do you think this bill is about journalism?
Yes, and one thing I'd like to pick up on, Dr. Geist referred to the QCJO and, saying that there's nothing about journalism in here. You might want to read section 27(1)A, which refers to a qualified Canadian journalism organization as defined in subsection 2481 of the Income Tax Act. It's right in the legislation, Dr. Geist.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask the same question to Hebdo-Québec. To both witnesses from Hebdo-Québec, do you think this bill has to do with journalism? Yes. This bill only has to do with journalism. It is the defense of journalism. It is the health of journalism, and it is the raison d'etre of journalism. It is nothing other than that. And when I hear that the major companies are going to take all of the revenues because of this bill and that the small companies will not benefit, I am part of these small companies. I need this revenue. All of my teammates and employees need to be compensated by this type of bill. And we represent 200 journalists all over Quebec, and all Quebec publishers in Quebec and across Canada, from Newfoundland to Vancouver, would agree. I fully agree, and I know that small newspapers in my riding in Quebec would agree.
Mr. Scott, first of all, I'm very appreciative of the fact that you have retained an English newsroom in Quebec. That is very important to those of us from the minority English-speaking community in Quebec. But I want to come to some of the myths, I think, about this bill. So first, there's this myth that it will stifle innovation. You did a startup. You are an innovator. Do you feel that this bill stifles innovation?
Thank you for the question. This bill helps innovation still exist. As things currently stand, I've heard other witnesses talk about relitigating the past around news organizations, and I've been in those newsrooms as well in the past. This isn't about relitigating the past. These deals have already been struck. This has already happened. And Google and Meta didn't have to strike these deals, not link tax deals, I might add, just licensing deals. They didn't have to do any of that. They chose to do it. They've picked their winners already. And what this bill does is it helps to level the playing field and prevent those winners from getting the distinct advantage. Newsrooms can spend their money in 3 areas. 1, going after talent and reporters and editors. 2, going after audiences. And 3, getting their journalism people in new ways. The money that has already been allocated by these big tech platforms to publishers has put those of us trying to innovate at a distinct disadvantage.
And let me just ask, the other thing that I'm hearing, of course, is the compromising of journalistic independence. Will this compromise the independence of you and the people that work for you?
It does not, and I should point out that I personally recused myself from any coverage that was ever done about this bill in my newsroom in September of 2020 when it first became apparent that I would have to be involved in this. I don't know what they report. Sometimes they report on things that actually hurt my own personal interests.
Mr. Deegan? Do you think this will compromise the independence of all of the people affiliated with Postmedia?
Not at all. I mean, no more than, General Motors would run an ad in the Globe and Mail or the Toronto Star. I mean, if someone from GM phoned up the Globe and said, hey, I don't like your coverage, I'm going to pull my advertising, I think the publisher would tell them to go take a hike.
And Hebdo-Québec, do you believe there will be any problems posed to your journalistic integrity because of this bill? No, in no way whatsoever. There is always a protection between owners of a news company. Why would there be any problems flowing from this bill?
I'm left, or am I done?
Thank you, Anthony. That's it. You have 10 seconds.
No, it's okay. I sacrificed the 10.
All right, thank you. I now go to the Bloc Québécois, Martin, for 2.5 minutes, please.
Anthony, avec votre expérience, vous devriez...
Anthony, with your experience, you should know that you shouldn't be asking for time. You should just keep going. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to speak. Madam Chair, you are encroaching on my time.
Started you yet, Martin?
Ça, c'est très bon.
That's excellent. Mr. Deegan, a poll was carried out by Polera that said that 90% of Canadians believe that something must be done to help local media survive. 79% agree that web giants should share revenues with media, and 80% agree with the essence of this bill. Do you think these Canadians are well informed?
Ils sont très bons.
Absolutely. They are very well informed. We put this question to people who identify with all political parties, and all participants believe that local journalism is very important and requires legislation to support journalism. I can confirm that for you. I represent a region where we have a very essential news service in Drummondville, and we don't know what we would do in the riding without that service. I would like to put the same question to Hebdo Québec, but first of all, could you tell me, when it comes to a press, written press, do you think that in Quebec, media will be able to come out on the other side? Do you think you will need to collectively negotiate with web giants? How do you see this bill unfolding for you, to Hebdo Québec? Yes, we want to have a collective with all sized news media outlets in Canada. Quebec is interesting because La Presse is one of the great innovators in North America because of its tablet service, and it is very important for Quebec media to be part of a collective. We have also spoken, for example, with a number of companies, including Québecor, and it's very important for Québecor, La Presse, Le Devoir, and weeklies to be part of a collective because we are stronger together. Thank you, Mr. Deegan. Madam Chair, I believe that's all the time that I have.
You have 12 seconds, Mr. Shampoo.
And
now 6.
I will take this opportunity again to thank the witnesses once again for being with us. Now I think my time's over. Thank you.
Thank you. And now for the New Democratic Party, Peter Julian for 2.5 minutes, please.
Mais, Madame la Présidente, je prendrai aussi les 10 secondes de Monsieur.
I would also like to take Mr. Housefather's 10 seconds and Mr. Shampoo's 10 seconds. I would like to begin with Mr. Chartier.
3, Peter. Nice try.
Okay, merci.
Thank you. Mr. Chartier, congratulations. 170 years of contribution to Saint-Hyacinthe. That is truly extraordinary. I was fortunate enough to live in Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean and to travel all around Quebec. So are you certain? Because I see that when I travel in these regions, weeklies are so important in every corner of Quebec. So are you sure that C18, as designed, will support these newspapers, that these small businesses, even in remote areas, will be able to benefit from C18? And if not, how can we enhance this bill? Answer. I am deeply convinced, and all of my colleagues, who I'm sure you must have met across Quebec, who own weekly newspapers, will be able to manage very well thanks to C18, even if they are located in remote areas. As Mr. Deegan mentioned, we will be negotiating in one block for all of Canada. We even have Quebec daily publishers who have grouped themselves in a single block so that we can all negotiate together. And this strength will mean that we will surely be able to take the most advantage possible in these agreements. We have heard concerns about this bill, but as it is written, we believe that it will benefit regional journalism across Quebec and Canada. And especially foster a healthy democracy. Mr.
Extraordinary work, and it's very exciting. Are there any improvements that you can see that we can make to the bill? Anything that you would suggest in terms of amendments?
Thank you, Mr. Julian. Yes, there, you mentioned, you were asking before about how the smaller publishers do relative to the larger ones. I think the proportionality question is a big one for us that is concerning. And so one way to reconcile that we've proposed and submitted to you all is regarding Section 86 of the bill with the annual report, the independent auditor. We would propose that the items outlined in 86 related to the impact of these agreements be shared in real time with the arbiters as these deals occur, as opposed to after a year, so that as one deal happens, all the others are proportionally adjudicated in a similar fashion, as opposed to now where you could have 1 to 3 years of deals done that were completely different in terms of size and scale and scope.
Thank you very much. Thanks to our witnesses, and thank you to Mr. Housefather and Mr. Shampoo for having offered their additional time.
Thank you very much, Peter. And I now go to the Conservatives for 5 minutes, and Kevin Waugh. Kevin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome all. One of the things that I've witnessed is CBC is pilfering talent from the newspapers across this country. And it's going to continue with this bill. I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't think CBC, which develops little or no talent on their own, because they just pilfer from mid to lower newspapers in this country, and that is an issue that this bill is going to deal with. So I guess I'm going to start with news media. Mr. Deegan, I know my statement is correct. I've seen it. It's going to continue. And with this bill going through, it will continue even more. We are going to get reporters with little or no experience put in rural Canada because there are no reporters. Your thoughts on this?
Listen, I agree with you. It's a huge problem with the CBC in terms of pilfering talent. Local papers develop talent. I mean, you've got your own background. You know this firsthand, and then they take them. They're making far more money with the CBC. It's a big issue. That's why it's important that we have. I think this legislation will get us on sort of a more firm commercial footing. The one thing I would ask you as members of the committee to look at, and I know it was in the Liberal platform last summer during the election campaign, is to cut off advertising for CBC during their news and current affairs programs. I mean, we're competing with them head to head. They've already got a $1.4 billion leg up on us, and we're competing with them for advertising. That's not fair. That's not right. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a place for the public broadcaster in Canada. They do exceptional work, but they shouldn't be competing with private enterprises for commercial advertising.
I agree with you more. They're competing with everybody,
yep.
And they win because they're the CBC and the national that they have. The other question I got, Mr. Geist, is simply, can you tell me, or can somebody on this tell me, what the Moosomin World Spectator, we're told this is going to be worth a lot of money to local independent owners. What can the owner of the Moosomin World Spectator expect from this deal? Is it $5,000 a year? Is it $10,000 a year? Is it $100,000 a year? If he's got 2 employees in the newsroom, he's eligible. I have not heard a figure that I can take back to an independent owner in this country to say it's good. Yeah, sure, it's good. I'm getting $5,000 extra dollars. I need the figure, the exact figure that will be negotiated to the lower and medium cities, newspapers. Can someone tell me on this panel what they can expect? I've heard outrageous numbers, and I need to know exactly the number that they can expect. Anybody on this panel want to take a shot at that? Mr. Geist.
Okay, I'll start. Thank you, Mr. Watt. I don't think anybody can give you an exact number because I don't think anybody knows at this stage. And we certainly don't know what people are getting in Australia either. Mr. Sims might, but the public generally doesn't know any of this kind of information. So there's a great deal of secrecy associated with that system, at least in terms of what's available publicly. We don't know, but here's the two things we do know. One, we know that these businesses will effectively be forced to participate in this. Why? Because their competitors, like, as you mentioned, the CBC and others are in. So you can't compete effectively. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of smaller independent media organizations, oftentimes digital first, in local communities. They're oftentimes thriving, and they're going to struggle to not participate because they're competing against those that are taking the cash. Let me also very quickly, and then I see Ms. Gerson has a comment, very quickly note just for Mr. Deegan, if he would continue with section 27(1) sub A, it does mention QCGOs, and then there's an important word, it's or. And the or gives you sub B, which sets a low standard for accessibility to this program in which there are simply no standards.
Mr. Geist, I might point out that Kevin has the opportunity to ask Ms. Gerson to respond.
Well, I'm going to ask that right now, Madam Chair.
Good, right, fine, Kevin.
Go ahead.
You have 37 seconds, Ms. Gerson.
Sorry, I would just point out that under the qualified journalism program, organizations like the Line don't qualify because, of course, we're owner-owned. We are owned by two people and we produce our own content. So because we are the only two journalists working for our organization and we own the organization, we don't qualify for this. So this is one of those issues that I think is one of those problems that stifle innovation, because it means that a lot of the startups that are created by the journalists themselves won't qualify until they reach a certain mass, which makes it harder and harder to compete. Now that's something that could be addressed.
Thank you, Ms. Gerson. I'm sorry, the time is up. I'm going to now move to the Liberals. Tim Lewis for 5 minutes, Tim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate this. I would like to start my questions with Dr. Sims. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I appreciate this. In my writing, Dr. Sims, there's a number of small independent weekly news outlets, and some of them are as small as two journalists and an editor. And we know that strong independent news is always important, and it was even more important throughout the pandemic. You've heard the number of people asking the same questions. It's because that's what we're hearing on the ground. The concern from these small news outlets is that they want to be reassured that they're going to be part of the collective negotiations with these tech giants. And it was very comforting to hear that in your opening remarks you said that companies are feeling comfortable and they've moved from pessimism to optimism. Can you give some evidence, some numbers that how these companies are doing, especially the smaller journalists and news outlets?
The companies involved with Country Press, the media, the 180 media organisations with Country Press Australia, and I would certainly urge the committee to get in touch with them. They have got, from my understanding, and I'm sorry I can't share this, and I realise that's what I said before, an improvement of the Canadian bill, but they have got, per journalist, I think, more money than anybody else. So the smallest, rural, oldest newspapers that have been in existence for a long time, they have done extremely well, and they would be quite happy to tell you about this. I should just add, in relation to the digital natives, they are all in favour, to my understanding, of the bill, of the Australian bill. They have all benefited, and it is helping them as small digital natives to grow as well. So we're not only getting the traditional Country Press Australia papers benefiting enormously and being very appreciative, we're also getting the digital natives, the ones who innovate and come into the market, they are also comfortable. So there's no issue there at all where they are complaining. There are none of them complaining.
That's very comforting to hear. And maybe to follow up, Dr. Sims, if our local media starts doing well, can you actually see the trend of small outlets closing not only cease, but perhaps even to address what has been referred to here as news deserts and possibly expand to other regions? Is that a possibility?
Oh, I think there's no doubt in my mind that with the Australian Code and what I understand in Bill C-18, that you are going to get growth in smaller publications. This does give them the ability to do that. And certainly some of those Country Press Australia organisations, they are going to use some of that money to be much more sophisticated digital players as well, and that will help them grow. They will benefit and grow. There's just no doubt.
That's also good to hear. Maybe I could turn to Mr. Deegan. C18 is just one of the tools in the government's toolbox that we're trying to support journalism. Can you speak to other programs that the government has introduced that would benefit this sector, perhaps the Periodic Fund or the Local Journalism Initiative?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. In this past year's budget, there's a number of supports for journalism which we think are terrific. One is the Local Journalism Initiative, which is chaired by our adjudication panel is chaired by Duff Jameson of Great West Publishing in Alberta. He's a terrific journalist, and that program, which was $10 million in the past, is $20 million for this year. That's very helpful. There's also an aid to publishers program, which for newspapers I think is about $16 million or so. Again, hugely helpful. And then one that Mr. Waugh and I were speaking about a minute ago. In this year's budget, they've announced $40 million over the next 3 years to support journalism. And I think if a strong proportion of that could be dedicated to the very small publications, those that Jen Gerson was referring to, that don't have the 2 arm's length employees, I think that's very important. I mean, it's important to support those smaller outlets. You know, a number of them are digital innovators and you know, folks doing really good work like Jen, but there's also, you know, print publications that are very small. You know, we've got on our board Sarah Holmes from the Gabriola Sounder in British Columbia. It's a very small paper. Her and her husband are putting it out. They don't have the 2 arm's length employees. So to look at funding like that, the $40 million over the next 3 years for tiny, smaller publications like that, I think is hugely important, because without her, there is no news in her community.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tim, you have 10 seconds left.
I just
Do you want to say something, or shall we?
Nope, thank you to everyone.
Okay, thank you very much. And so now I think we're going to come to a close. I think I want to thank all of the witnesses who came to speak with us, because I believe that this is so very important to the whole concept of freedom of the press and to keeping democracy alive. And now, before I entertain a motion to adjourn, I want to specifically thank Professor Sims. I have a son who is an emergency physician in Sydney, Australia, and I understand the time difference. So thank you for getting up very early in the wee hours of the morning to come and speak with us and address us. And you speak with a lot of authority and a lot of experience because of the fact that Australia had already dealt with this particular type of legislation. And I'm pleased to see that you see some new innovations in our own legislation. Thank you very much, everyone, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
It's Chris Biddle, so moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chris. Goodbye, everyone. See you again at the next meeting. Thanks.
It's been a privilege to be involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sims.